Welcome, Eryn and Michelle. Please, we want to hear about your new book called Strengthening Library Ecosystems, Collaborate for Advocacy and Impact. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. How's everybody today? Um, let's see. I am going to ask Michelle to go ahead and yep, there we go. Our slide deck
There you go.
up.
We're up.
And we're so glad you're here with us. We're excited to talk to you about the book, the contents within the book, and kind of the whole idea and uh, impetus behind the book, which of course is advocating for libraries, which we all love and adore. So now that we have the deck up, you can scan the lovely little Dino QR code and get the deck yourself. You can follow along with us. I believe we will drop Sarah or Dorcas can drop the slides in the chat for us as well. They're here with us today.
It's
and
in
we'll
the, they've already did it. Sarah did it earlier.
Of course they have.
Yes.
Of course they have.
Yep.
These ladies are awesome. So, Michelle, if you want to move us. So this is us, Dorcas, Sarah, Michelle, and myself, Eryn. We coalesced as a team right around the beginning of the pandemic to help get this idea of the ecosystem and ecosystem-based advocacy work out into ALA and into libraries. And other team members have been a part and come and gone and been helpful and useful, but this squad of four has been at this for quite some time now. And out of that work came this book because we really wanted to share the things that we had learned, the things that had been discussed and worked on and used by other states. And within the book, we have, gosh, almost a dozen guest authors as well, some really extremely knowledgeable people that we are honored to have as a part of this. So hi, Dorcas. Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
All right. And so the book, as you can see, is in the ALA store, which I believe someone dropped in the chat for us, and has this beautiful cover that we're all so proud of. Thank you, ALA design team and the authors. And again, like I said, multiple guest authors. We have Dr. Anthony Chow, was one that I worked closely with. We have Barb Stripling's chapter, which is amazing, and quite a few others. So I hope that you will check it out. It's a labor of love and by a lot of people. Right, Michelle?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's start with what exactly is a library ecosystem? And as Eryn said, we kind of started this whole idea. Dorcas was on, and Sarah were both on the COLA, which is Committee on Library Advocacy, an ALA committee. And so Dorcas started a side project about an ecosystem and building the toolkit that now supports an ecosystem. So that's what the whole book is about, how to incorporate the different tools that you will see in the ecosystem itself, in the toolkit, and kind of how all of that works together. The book gives you a little more hands-on experience from different perspectives, like Eryn was talking about. But ultimately, an ecosystem is, as you can see, by what's up on the screen right now, is that it's an interconnected network of all libraries. And not just of the libraries, but of everyone that supports your library. I know, coming from a K-12 background, that I honestly functioned in a silo for a good chunk of my time for over a decade, before I finally realized that my public librarian counterparts could be helping me do a lot of things. And so, but at the same time, I also learned how to reach out to and create relationships with partners in education, community members, whether that be the parents or actual corporations that could help support my library. Okay, so this graphic is one of those that I think feeds nicely into what we said about us being interconnected. It's all libraries learning how to speak with one voice. I know from my personal experience in Oklahoma, while I worked with public librarians in my life of K to 12, I now am a faculty member at a higher ed institution, that I didn't know a lot when it came time to advocate for a public library, especially you know, whether I'm talking to community members or if I'm actually on legislative day going to the Capitol and talking, I didn't know what their key points were. And that honestly, a lot of their key points were the same key points I had for a school librarian. Academic librarians, same thing. I had no idea what was important to them. So that is something that over the last 4 years, as we've started learning about the ecosystem and how to implement it, that has started to change for the 4 of us, but also for many people that we have communicated with. Okay, so there are 4 pillars that the ecosystem is kind of based on. Leadership is probably the first one that most people are going to start with. And as you can see, Eryn created this graphic. And we think all of these things lead into a positive leadership role. And that if you're going to be the one that starts it, that you need to take these things into account as you start to create your ecosystem. One of the other pillars is sustainability. So as you're starting to lead and create your ecosystem, at that point, think about sustainability. Okay, well, I'm going to get this ball rolling, but then who's going to take this ball? Because at some point you're going to want to step back and say and help support it, but it not necessarily be a leader in it. So keep that in mind. And the next one is, this came about as we were writing the chapters in the book, or listing, as Eryn said, we have several guest authors who have written different chapters. And this came out as a part of in chapter 7, where it talks about change agents. And that's kind of our goal, is to be a change agent. As you're creating your ecosystem, you cognitively obviously need to kind of change your philosophy and get out of your silo if you're in one currently, which is typically the case. And start creating those relationships with people that can join you in your ecosystem. So, all righty. Miss Eryn, you're up.
Yes. So we are school librarians here today, or school librarian adjacent perhaps. And how can we support the ecosystem as school librarians in today's current climate? We are often the ones with big ask and the need for support. And sometimes it can get lost, this idea that we have something to offer our counterparts in other libraries as well. And it's really important that it is balanced and that we do work for each other instead of just always asking. And so we suggest that you reach out to your public librarians and the librarians at the university and colleges in your area. Ask them, what do you need? What issues are you facing? How can I support you? Sometimes it's as little, or not little, but sometimes it's, hey, could you teach your kids some citations? In fact, that's often that. And sometimes it's, hey, we're about to go on strike because they're not paying our adjuncts. And can you help us? And then you can say, well, how can we support? And keep going with that conversation. Attend and present at other library organizations. Go to ACRL, go to PLA. If your state library org is broken into 2 parts, go to both if you can. Present at the other one if you can. Get to know people. Join a committee on, the other library organization if you're a member of the state school library organization. Being involved in both of those is how I originally kind of took this ecosystem idea into Tennessee. Was I was attending school library org meetings and the state library organization meetings, and realized that we were talking about the same thing, but it was just getting repeated twice. And so building those bridges and strengthening that communication is really at the core of this. Additionally, you can present at other organizations here in Washington. 2 of my cohorts presented at the superintendent organization on how to make sure you have a good collection development policy in your school district and why. And that went over really well. They found it extremely helpful, and it put librarians on the radar as team members for the superintendents. Go to the teachers unions if you're lucky enough to have one. Go to the ASCD, go to, present, attend, build these relationships. And then community organizations like the PTA and the Rotary Club. Here, the PTA had their statewide organization meeting a couple months ago. 3 of us from the library org sat out at a table. We had books from our state award winners for the year on the table, which was a big draw. And we had our brochures talking about the importance of school librarians. We talked to parents, we talked to teachers, we talked to principals, and we were able to tell them, like, hey, this is going on. Here's your elevator speech. Can you help us? And it was very fruitful. And then there's the political organizations such as the League of Women Voters, the ACLU, the Freedom to Read Foundation. Building all of those ties is really important. And to reiterate what Michelle said earlier, that sustainability piece is important, because someone might be great at building that tie with ACLU and another person might be great at going to the PTA meetings. Or someone might be able to do multiple of these things, and then life happens, and the next year they're not able to participate as much. So supporting and building up the membership to be a part of this advocacy, no matter what library they come from, is also important. And that leads us into working with other library types. Learn what the issues are for the public and academic librarians. Intellectual freedom may look a bit different in those other settings, but it's still intellectual freedom. It's still that core value that's important to all of us. Make sure we're respecting and supporting the education, training, and experience of all library workers, that we're building up the profession across the board and united in a united way. And then what talking points can they provide to you? Do you understand the issue? Ask. We're going to get more to that in a slide, 2 slides down. But think about that. Like, what do you need to know from the other library types? And the easiest way to find out is ask the questions. Where's your voice needed? Local public library board, city council, legislator? Okay. Think about where you can have your impact.
Oops, sorry, Eryn. Cut you off there.
All good.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about, we're going to circle back to talking about one voice. As I said, when I originally started advocating, I knew how to advocate, obviously, for school libraries because I had been one. But how to advocate for other library types, I had no idea, honestly, until about 4 years ago. And as Eryn just said, ask, start those conversations so you do know. So then when you are talking to whoever you're talking about, you can show the lines that connect you, that, this is important to me as a school librarian, but this is also important to our colleagues that are public librarians or academic librarians. And that's kind of where breaking down those silos and learning to speak with one voice comes from. But if you're not willing to kind of step out of your silo, then creating an ecosystem that's going to advocate for you, when it, like Eryn said earlier, if you start to have, if somebody's threatening to shut down your library, then it gives you a group to start with that you won't have if, you run into something like that. So obviously working towards one goal is one way of breaking down the silos. Another way is to start educating together, whether that be at a conference where, you work together to create a presentation, or maybe you go attend a presentation together and then figure out how the content from that presentation could cross over where you could work with a university librarian or a public librarian. Okay, Ms. Eryn.
Yes. So storytelling is powerful. We know this. We need to do a better job of telling our narrative than the anti-library folks do with theirs. It is a quote by Gretchen Pruitt from Publishers Weekly. Pretty to the point and so accurate. And to be able to really do that storytelling, it helps to know the comprehensive picture. If you go and speak to a legislator and can speak so eloquently about the issues facing school librarians, but can't speak to what's happening in public libraries, what's happening in city councils, and other issues that those legislators are probably catching buzz of, it's going to diminish your message. But if you go in and you can tell this comprehensive story about how libraries are important to the whole community and how all of the libraries play a part in that role, and we need each of them, your story is going to have more impact. And so sharing that information with each other and building that communication and having that singular message that gets shared over and over. So when the legislator hears it from person B, C, and D, they're hearing something very similar, it sticks. And so that storytelling is powerful. Data can be powerful too. You really do need both, but that data needs to be a very succinct and often very visual story. Here in Washington, we use the LibSlide data. We use the map of where we have school librarians and where we don't, and it was extremely effective. We put it everywhere. It's a very stark visual of that is data that really tells that story. So we'll move to the next. So there's this myth of going it alone, particularly as school librarians, right? We are our own department within the school. We are separated from our fellow school librarians within the district often, if there even are others. And there's this idea of like, I can do what I need to do. And I've got my job and I just do the school library thing. But the idea is a patron of one library is a potential patron of any other library at different times. No library exists independent from the ecosystem, no matter what, whether we're advocating for each other and working together or not, we're still part of the same web, providing very similar services to our community. So the collaboration, the partnerships, and the coalitions, whether it's in the day-to-day work or the advocacy work, are really important. So we put this image up here of the Aspen quake. I believe this Pando is yes, it is the Aspen, where it looks like multiple different organisms. It looks like a forest of trees, but as many of us have seen this before and know, it's really one organism with a very strong root system. And the trees are simply arms of this one big beastie. And librarians are kind of the same way. We're each an arm of this one big organism. And when we share information and we share resources and we work together, then each of those trees is going to thrive, right? We are not siloed, even though it often feels that way. In that, decision makers don't want to hear about the niches. They don't want to hear about necessarily your specific library's issue with a book ban. They want to hear about the larger, broader issues that they can make bigger decisions to impact. So we do better with cooperative ask. Michelle? So this comes from work that Michelle and Dorcas did in Texas, where they brought a group together of librarians from different types who were interested in the advocacy work. And they essentially workshopped all day to figure out how to build their ecosystem, how to strengthen those 4 strands of the leadership, the communication, et cetera. And in that was this exercise where they had these questions based on real things happening in Texas at that moment, continuing. Sorry, Texas. And sorry, a lot of states, okay. And the idea was, okay, look at this from your perspective as a school librarian and tell us what you don't know yet. Look at this from your perspective as a public librarian. What do you need to know? And same for the university librarians. So the Houston librarians are uniting to support the Houston school district librarians as the superintendent closes libraries. What information do you need to engage effectively with the community and legislators when this issue arises? And so the public librarians got to say, well, I don't know how the superintendent affects, this or that, or what books are being banned, or anything like these specific minutia questions that could then get answered by the other people in the room, which again builds that story, builds that collective voice. And so then the question was around the public library. They're replacing the library board with members supporting censorship. What do you need to know, public librarians, about how this works and about how we can combat this? As a school librarian, I would have a lot of questions like, how much power does the library board have? How does that work? What are their processes? And then A&M lost their faculty status last year. Why does this matter to the university? Why should the faculty and students be upset? How can the library community have spoken up if they realize what is happening, what was happening? Okay. So these are questions that you can think about when you look at your own state and your own library organizations of what are our knowledge gaps about each other's strengths and difficulties, and let's have conversations about this.
Okay, so for those who have already have accessed the slides, there is a hyperlink that is, if you'll just click on personal action plan, you will find a Google form. And we're asking you to just kind of share some next steps for you from just kind of starting to think in this direction. In a few weeks, you will hear from us again, just kind of checking in, seeing if there's anything that we can do to help you maybe, make suggestions. Because like I said, we've been at this for 4 years now, and we've written a book on it and edited a book on it at the same time. So yeah, so if you could do that for us, this is just something simple. We're not looking for a long like thesis or dissertation. So, but if you could help us out by either following the QR code or going up and clicking on the personal action plan, we would appreciate the information that you could share with us.
And when you're thinking about that action plan, think about some of the things like, I will attend a conference other than a school library conference, or I will reach out to my public librarian and ask what they need or how we can work together, especially as the school year is about to start up. Some of these things that we've talked about that can be, or maybe it's, gosh, I'm going to join the advocacy committee of the state library org and maybe even chair it. And if you're feeling that excited today, yay, we're excited for you. Uh-oh, QR code's not working. Dorcas, will you drop a link in the chat for us? Sorry about that. We checked it, and then, technology.
Okay. Anyway, we'll get it worked out. Okay. Yeah. And think about it in ways of what we call the 30, 60, 90. So what you can do in 30 days, what may take you 60 days to do. And then there are some things that you're like, this is going to take 90 days to get it done. It's one of those things that one of the 2 librarians that helped us write the chapter from an academic library perspective, that was something that she contributed to one of our very first presentations that we did 4 years ago. So it's hard to believe it's been 4 years, but yeah. Okay, anything else you want to share, Ms. Eryn, on this one? No,
I don't think so.
Okay.
Here.
This is a small list of other items that we have created. The top one is the ecosystem toolkit website. And the other things are like either handouts that we've created, other webinars that we have done that you're obviously certainly welcome to click on those and look at that. If you haven't had time yet to check out the ALA's action plan workbook, it is very nice. I think it, along with our book, will work really well together. And then, of course, we've done a presentation with Unite Against Book Bans as well. Okay, Ms. Eryn, you want to talk about the map?
Before I talk about this slide real quick, I want to speak to something Katie McNamara said in the chat. Important to publish in EDU magazines, not just library-centric. In my graduate program, my capstone was on the labeling of books in libraries for reading level and requiring students to read on the reading level or letting them do free choice reading, and who was talking about it. And by and large, educators were talking about it and librarians were not talking about it as much. And so our voice on the importance of free choice in library reading was not near as loud as the voice of the literacy coaches and the reading coaches and the English teachers who were like, no, you must read on level. And especially in those education journals. And so I just want to say thank you for pointing that out, Katie. And yes, it is super important that our voice gets heard on issues kind of big and small and more than just the library journals. So please write. It's, you don't have to already have massive credentials behind your name to write for these journals and to have a voice in these conversations. So thank you for that. So back to the slides, the state's working on ecosystems initiatives. So these little pinpoints are for the states who have worked directly with us and built more or less formalized ecosystem coalitions whose whose main objective is to make sure that this communication is happening, that these singular, list of advocacy objectives are being created and shared and worked from. Not to say that the ecosystem idea isn't being done in other states, because it definitely is, because we all know we need to work together, especially in these trying times. But these are where there are formal ecosystem coalitions that are really using kind of the nitty gritty of that ecosystem toolkit. And now that ALA advocacy workbook, which again is beautiful. And I just thank you, Sarah and Dorcas, for dropping those links in the chat for us.
Eryn, I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off because we're running out of time.
Yes,
sorry,
please
friend.
do. Nope, do it.
Okay, so we've had some questions already posted in the chat. Does anybody else have questions that we are happy to answer? At this point, we can ask Sarah and Dorcas to join us if you have a question that maybe they can answer. Oops.
Don't be shy. Or if you want to tell us about an ecosystem or advocacy success that you've seen where you are, we would love to hear from you.
Stories. Yeah. Okay, well, you can go ahead and our emails, like we said, are on slide number 2. You're certainly welcome to send us an email. We're always happy to hear from anybody. So if you don't necessarily want to ask a question today, or if you think, oh man, I know how that goes, sometimes you're like, oh, I wish I had asked that question. But just please feel free to reach out to any of the 4 of us. We'll be happy to help you or to answer any question. And we're going to
Do you want to put the email slide back up, Michelle? Go back to slide 2.
Yep. Sorry, whoever I'm giving motion sickness to. I don't do this as a professor because I'm usually the one that gets motion sickness.
There we go.
There you go. There's all 4 of us again with our happy faces because we're done with the book.
Yay. We hope y'all like it.
Yep. Casey, thank you. We can't say thank you enough for allowing us to do this presentation today. This was fabulous. Thank you so much.
By all means, yes, it's a message that needs to be heard by all of us. Thank you very much for your time today and coming in and sharing a wealth of information.
You're very welcome. Hope everybody has a great day.
Let's give them some love in the chat, guys.
Yeah, I see it blowing up now.